I mean, I wonder how the Democrats look at history. I wonder how they feel about it, because there is a contingency in this country of people that don't believe in history. Like, they don't. The only way they want history taught, especially in relation to American history, but really all history in general, the only way they want history taught is by every other sentence putting an asterisk and talking about how terrible in general white people are and how oppressive and every other thing. Those are the far left radicals. Those are the people that are communists. Those are the people that are socialists. Those are the people that we see them out there every day as BLM and Antifa. And those are a lot of people in the Democrat Party. But I'm wondering about the other people, the center leftists and such, the regular Democrats. I'm just wondering, how do they feel about history? Would they say the same things, that history shouldn't be taught unless you put an asterisk next to every single thing that any European has ever done throughout history, and say something as a disclaimer about how terrible they are, or how somebody's rights are trampled? Because there are a lot of civilizations that have gone to war and have done things that are along the lines of conquering not just European civilizations. There have been many Asian and Middle Eastern, African, etc. So you could do that for everybody, I guess, or you could just assume that it's implied that sometimes things like that happen in the course of something else happening. Sometimes something very good, like American history, right? So I wonder how they feel about history, if they would allow American history to be taught the same way that I, for the most part, learned it. I had a really good history teacher when I was in high school. I mean, I had more than one history teacher, obviously, throughout the years, but I had one in particular that was really good. In my junior and senior year, there were elective classes related to history that I could take, so I ended up taking more than one history class. And this teacher was very good at pulling me into the story of what he was teaching, as well as being good at giving a good perspective. He told the American story as an American should, and he did on occasion point out when there were injustices to people, but he never invalidated the accomplishments of people in America, and he never said that at any time in history that sometimes good things don't come without sacrifice, or things that later on we look back on and are not happy about or proud of. So that's just kind of how it is as a human, as evolving. And I always respected his position and the way he taught stuff. But I've seen what modern day teaching of history is in areas where they basically shame everything that America's ever done. And I guess I just bring that up because for those of us that don't do that, when we look back on a lot of facets of American history, most specifically the American Revolution, when we think about the courage, the bravery, the creativity, the resolve of the Founding Fathers and the things that they stood for, it's an important part of who we are and what makes up our country. And the thing is that we know that a lot of people, other people don't seem to know, is that you can be any race or religion or group of people as long as you are American, and you can still feel that same pride. Just because, for example, Thomas Jefferson was of English descent doesn't mean that if you're not English in 2020, you can't be proud of what your American ancestor did. I guess none of us ever questioned that was how it is. But it seems to be that this group of people that look back on that, they feel that if you are not of the practically direct bloodline of anybody who was a founding father, then you should have absolutely no reason to have any pride in what was accomplished. As well as if you are a direct bloodline, then you're some kind of fucking piece of shit because of what your ancestors did. I just bring that up because if I'm looking around today on the social media feeds and I'm seeing patriot groups in places like Arizona and Detroit. Last night I saw a bunch in Philadelphia, where they are by polling stations in most of those cities. In fact, all the battleground areas, that's where this has been happening. I haven't seen that much in North Carolina, but in Georgia, Philadelphia, Arizona, and then Michigan, because it looks like Michigan is just rife with corruption. So those people are out there. Some of them are protesting. Some of them are supposed to be poll observers and aren't being let in. Some of them are reporting. But in the end, if Trump wins this election through the courts, well, I told you already, Biden's already won. It's already a done deal. I knew he was going to win. He's probably going to take the remaining states, and then the only way that Trump is going to win those is through court, where they go back in and they figure out how they do an investigation into how he was cheated, and they write it. That's the only way that's going to go. And I believe they plan to do that, and that's, if they count the legal votes, that's what we're going to see. But I don't know what to say to those people, I guess, that have that perception of history, except, and the super hardcore lefties aren't going to listen to me. So more for the more reasonable Democrats and the center lefts, do something like watch an overseas news broadcast from the last 48 hours and watch how other people looking in on us are seeing what's going on. Because I'll tell you, if you watch any one of those channels, and I mean, there are a lot of them, so of course you're going to get a lot of opinions, but in general, the consensus is they all feel that Trump won, and they all feel that right now our political system is a joke. If you watch any one of the U.S. networks, the main networks, even Fox, for as much better as Fox is than a lot of the other ones at times, if you watch any one of these networks, it looks like it looks completely different than it does if you watch a network from another. I mean, I've just been watching Sky News, which is the Australian, one of the main Australian news services, and they've been saying for days, and it's pretty obvious what's happened here. It's pretty obvious that Trump has won. It's pretty obvious that when they look at, for example, when they look at what has happened with the legality of the mail-in vote, meaning the mail-in votes that are turned in without the things that they're supposed to have, signatures, correct postmarks, etc. When they look at that, when they look at the quantity of the votes that come in blocks, and if I may fucking say personally, what I find interesting is every time these large blocks of votes that come in for Biden that seem to be 100% Biden-sided, they always seem to come in the small hours, between like 2 and 5 in the morning. They always seem to get counted, and they always seem to come in chunks in those times of the day. But when they see what's happening, to them, it's clear that our political system is no longer has full integrity, or even a strong integrity in most things, but that our political system is fucked up and is being rigged. That's what they see. So if you turn off American media, all right, social media, you tend to get extremes going either way. I mean, I guess always, but especially now, because on social media you get, basically Antifa or Patriots, right, or whatever you want to call it. You get farther left and farther right people, and they're quite excitable. But if you go to mainstream, the mainstream media looks confused. It talks about things. I don't even have the fucking words for it. I just think about that newscast that I watched last night, where Trump came out and talked for a couple of minutes. It's the first time he's talked since election night. What they like to do when Trump talks, generally, the mainstream media, is they like to have him talk for as long as possible, and they will take the smallest portion of anything that he says that they can make him look bad by, and that's the story that they run with. So generally, this is their MO. They let him talk. They always hit him almost always hit him with really poor questions or harassing questions. But more to the point, they like to let him go, because if they can take 2 words out of 10,000 words that he said, make them a headline and make them look bad, that's how they get their stories. Last night, and he only talked for 5, 6, 7 minutes at the most. It wasn't very long. media didn't even, mainstream media, except for Fox, mainstream media didn't even air his whole speech. You couldn't even find it when it was live or afterwards. They didn't even put it up on their YouTubes. They did nothing. They listened to about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes of it, and then they cut away and started to narrate over it. I mean, who does that? You know, if you want to look not guilty when you commit a crime, there are a couple of key things that you do. First of all, you don't silence the opposition. When you actively try to silence the opposition, you look guilty as fuck. Even if you're not guilty, you look guilty. More so to that point, when there is the opportunity for people to observe vote counting, to observe, and you don't let them. Or you say, yeah, you can observe, but you have to be from a remove where you can't obviously actually observe. Even if you are not cheating, it looks like you're fucking cheating. You look guilty as hell. And there's no logic to that. There's no logic to that because all that you do by making yourself look that way is further incite the people on the far right, and you take the people who are on the center right, and even some who are on center left, and you have them going, why in the fuck would you do that? Just let the people watch. Let's get this over with. Let them watch, count the votes, and then we're done. Especially people who are of the mindset that Biden won, legitimately. Especially those people. You alienate your own people. So, knowing that happens, it's crazy to me that they continue to behave like this in all these areas. Being in Wisconsin, I've talked often about how what Trump's chances of winning are, and I told you, anecdotal evidence as it may be, all I can tell you is how many people have shown up to rallies and what the enthusiasm level looks on the street, just like what does it look like with political signs in a very blue area. Well, you don't really see very many Trump signs because people who have displayed them become harassed. And I said that to some extent, just like along the same school of thought as the shy voters, you have the people who, by absence of a Biden sign, are kind of supportive of Trump. Though, like I said, all the evidence may be anecdotal. If you put it all together, and if you hear the attitude of people, here's an example, something I've never really gone over with anybody too particularly, just because it's a bit cumbersome. But there are times when I'm walking around the area I live in, which is pretty densely populated, and I might be watching a Twitter feed or a YouTube feed of somebody who is doing something or talking about something pro-Trump, or I may just have politics on where I might have just a news segment. Maybe Trump said something. This is in the last few weeks. The attitude of people as they walk by me or stand near me in a line at a gas station, that I might be at for a minute or two. The attitude of people when they hear that is also a big barometer. And there are definitely people that audibly scoff, and some people don't say anything, but there are a lot of people that get that little that kind of smile on their face, like, yeah, I get it, I know about all this shit. That to me is the best barometer of all as far as how is Milwaukee voting. And I live in a very Biden heavy supporting area. And in my area, I still think that what I just described is about half and half. And this is the Biden stronghold, and it's about half and half here. So, as well as I have been involved at the Republican office in the Black Voices for Trump. I've seen an incredible amount of support in that community for Trump. When I see that he just lost Wisconsin and he lost by like 20,000 or 18,000 votes, it's an extremely small number, and all the votes that put it over the edge came in Milwaukee late in the day, were all mail-in, were supposed to have been counted already, etc., etc. I see exactly why they would do a recount here. They should. Wisconsin's going to go red when they do a recount. But nobody wants to see this shit done in court, because then it's like installing a leader. Well, it's actually just following what the will of the people is, but I understand the feeling of it's like, quote, installing a leader. But what I want everybody who is not radical left to understand and appreciate is that demanding that legal votes be counted is also the will of the people. Saying that you shouldn't count illegal shit or that cheating shouldn't be allowed is not something that should make you upset. It's not something that should make you take to Twitter or other forms of social media and say, this is fucking bullshit. Why can't you people just accept the laws? Blah, 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 it's over. Because it's cheating. The cheating is more important than the result of the election. Do you not understand that? We all know that in this country, as in most countries in the world and throughout history, politics and government always carries some level of corruption. And the idea is just to keep that corruption down as low as possible, because completely eradicating it seems almost impossible. And in fact, except with extremist regimes that have taken over countries, it is pretty much impossible to keep all corruption out of politics. It just kind of happens. But something as large and as flagrant and direct as votes being added, especially in the 11th hour, and just by enough to push a candidate over the top, how can you accept that? How can you accept that? It doesn't matter who they're for or against. It doesn't matter what the result is of that particular vote. How can you accept that? And further, you know, if my gut feeling here is right, and in the end Trump wins, even though it's going to have to be through court, when people look back on this in history 20 or 100 years from now, they're going to look back on those people that we are seeing right now, nowadays on social media, standing in front of places, giving speeches and megaphones. They're going to look back on that as patriots with the same kind of feeling that we have toward founding fathers. Sure, there's always going to be negative and detractory things that you can say about anybody, but for the most part, they're going to say, thank God those people were there and they were active enough that they helped bring about the honest result. And seeing all these people, and just, again, all these people on social media saying that they need to shut up, they need to go home, they need to accept the results of the election and the will of the people. You guys ought to think about what you're saying. You're saying accept corruption, you're saying accept dishonesty, you're saying accept the result because it's what you want. It's not American. It's not democratic. It's not patriotic. I mean, if you're not going to be patriotic, why do you even want citizenship? Why do you even want to be in this country or be a part of this country? There are plenty of areas around the world that you can go to where whatever money you have right now and stuff that you could turn into money, you can live pretty well, and you can live in an area where it's idealized and in a way that you agree with, and do the kind of shit you want. I mean, why do you want to try to change this country and make everybody self-loathe and hate? That's not mentally healthy. There are things about blind patriotism that I don't like, you know, and I'm not one of those people that normally goes, throughout all time, in all instances in American history, I'm not one of those people that just blindly goes to shit and starts shouting, USA, USA. I don't like blind patriotism. I think patriotism has to come with a watchful eye and an intelligent and thoughtful mind. But in an instance like this, I have seen what's going on. And I will say USA, USA, because I don't want communism. I don't want socialism. I don't want to teach my kids that they have to fucking hate every single person in history who may have accomplished something just because we assume they didn't have the exact moral code that we find is okay. In fact, there's not many people that those with that attitude would see as being okay to say good things about. And that's just, who the fuck do you think you are? You know, I've had presidents that I didn't like, for example, but, you know, I still, if it came down to it, you know, I hated Bush. And I supported Obama in the first term, and partway through the first term, lost that. But it doesn't mean that in any of that time between 2000 and 2016, that if I were in the same area as the president and somebody tried to hurt him, that I wouldn't do my duty as a citizen and try to protect them. Even if I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that they did, even if I didn't like them personally. That's what it means to be a patriot, and that's what it means to be an American. And the fact that people have been upset about Donald Trump since the moment he got elected. I mean, they were more upset before that also, but their upset was metered by the fact that they didn't believe there was any way he could win. But the level of butthurt and consistent shitting on him from the second that he's gotten into office is part of the reason why you've got people like me motivated to say fuck you to you and everything you stand for and everything you try to do, because the people I didn't like, and I never acted like that. I didn't invalidate every single thing that they said and said, oh, not my fucking president, I hate this motherfucker, this guy can die, just over basic shit that they say. Not even, that's not how we act in this country. I mean, you have freedom of choice, free to do whatever you want, but, if you want to be a piece of shit, then just expect to be treated like a piece of shit.